we got a pretty cool agenda going on. We're going to talk about trade shows in general and what to do in 2022 with them for yourself. I got a couple of people from Gorilla who are pretty well-versed doing trade shows themselves, and Mary and Brendon, who both done it for their own industrial companies. But I also know almost everybody here has done a trade show too. And I certainly want this to be a dialogue that goes back and forth. So if you all have thoughts or best practices that you've done, or if you disagree with some of the things we say or have a counterpoint to it, I mean, raise your hand and jump in, and Peyton's going to unmute you. And I want to have that kind of back and forth dialogue. I think it'll be really fun. And really the thing we wanted to do more than anything was just bring a bunch of marketers in the industrial space kind of in one Zoom meeting, because we just thought it was awesome to do that, and just the power of networking. Because honestly, when I think about trade shows, that's probably my favorite aspect of it, is much less so the booth setup and the breakdown and all the badges that we scan. It's much more about the relationships I build with people at other companies who are doing this, who are doing the same thing that I'm doing, and basically laying groundwork to do things with them in the future. And so I really want this to be a similar sort of thing, because I think in the industrial space, most of us are marketing departments of one, or sometimes two or three, or a small department. And so it's hard sometimes to network with other people in the space. The trade show is sometimes the only opportunity you get to do that. And for many of us who have done the trade show before, as the marketing person for your company, you're stuck at that booth a lot of the time, just keeping it running, right? Keeping collateral, keeping swag, making sure food makes it there, making sure the meeting room is empty so people can have meetings in the booth. So, you're doing so much administrative work. You really have to wait till almost the last day to do that, right? And so I thought it was really cool to just try to get people here. So I hope people participate in the chat. I hope you all have a good time here. We're going to go right till 3:00. And then we're going to try to do this once a month on Tuesday and once a month on Thursday. And we hope you all have a good time and join us back. Thursdays, we're going to try to do in the mornings to do just something different, so it's not the same time all the time. And Peyton will be here with me, and then we'll rotate other people both at Gorilla, and then we're going to try to bring other people as well, like guests on as well, to be a different sort of take. So with that. So when we were doing,
and I want to clarify, when Matt says 3:00, he's in the Eastern time zone. So we're not going to keep you guys on for 2 hours, or depending on where you're at. Depending on where you're located, don't worry. And if you do have questions, I'm monitoring the chat. I'm going to keep letting folks in. But what we're going to do is we're going to chat for like the first 20-30 minutes or so, and then we'll open it up for like Q&A and just have this be a discussion of what y'all want to talk about. So like Matt was saying, today's topic is trade shows, and Matt, Mary, and Brendon are co-hosts for today. So Brendon, if you can wave. They were all in-house marketers before they were working at Gorilla. So we've got a lot of experts here. And like Matt said, you all have done this before. And we know that leadership teams love trade shows, but they also love ROI. And are they getting that with trade shows? So how can we make sure that that's happening? And I think the question, like Aaron Weeks even said at the very beginning when we opened up the chat, are trade shows dead? And that's a big question. Like, are they dead? Yes or no? And so maybe we just start there. And I'd love to know what you think, Mary.
Yeah, so I definitely don't think trade shows are dead. They're definitely still here. And as we can see in the chat, some people are still planning to attend them, which is great. So like Peyton kind of mentioned, leadership teams love trade shows. They especially love trade shows because they get to hand them off to marketing and say, okay, marketing, go do your thing, take the trade show over, let us know what happens. So I think there's a potential inroad here for tying trade shows back to revenue and business outcomes. So how can you do that? Like what about your trade show strategy can you change or revamp now that we're in 2022 and finally industrial companies are thinking about digital marketing? All right, Matt, what do you think about that?
I definitely don't think trade shows are dead whatsoever. I think a lot of people need to look at when it comes to the trade show, most people have at least one big trade show they do a year where they invest a lot of money into it. And by a lot, I'm talking $250,000, maybe somewhere if and in around that variable. And I think you need to look at, when you're looking at that trade show, really scrutinize that expense really hard. We were doing the prep call yesterday, and Brendon and I were going back and forth on not just the cost of the booth and utilities and drayage and shipping and labor, but also all the hidden costs that come with that show as well, which includes travel and hotel and dinner costs for every single member of your organization that goes there. Not only that, but Brendon, you made a great point, the salaries of those people as well, because you're basically taking them off the road for a week. And you need to consider, how much time am I taking them away from spending time with existing customers they could be doing house calls with, plus your own time as a marketer. And I would venture to guess anyone here who's run a larger trade show, you spend anywhere between 200 and 300 hours of your time when you're talking about going 3-4 months out all the way through investing in that show, in terms of planning things for your team, getting all the equipment together, getting all those forms ready, whether you work with GES or Freeman or whoever the events contractor is. And then just like checking and making sure you have all the equipment available and all your ducks lined in a row, handling freight and delivery, making sure your warehouse knows about it when it's coming. And, it's a lot of stuff to track, and you need to have all of those expenses in place when you're looking at it in terms of ROI. Because if you're going to spend $250,000 on a show, you should make sure that your booth is the right size, which is something we also talked about. Like maybe you have too big of a trade show booth for the investment that you're doing. And then tracking that all the way through after the show and seeing what happens with it. So I've done plenty of shows in my life where we spent $230,000 on the booth. We ended up getting 2 opportunities out of it. We scanned 300 badges. We had 9 opportunities out of it, and we closed 2 deals out of the trade show as the last touch. And it ended up being like, if you did the math on it, it was almost $100,000 loss on just terms of a straight event to ROI. And what that told me when I went back to my executive team at it is like, our booth is way too big. We're bringing way too many products to the show. We should be being much more judicious about the stuff that we show. And we should have a better plan going into it in terms of what are we doing with people who are already in pipeline? Maybe we sell a very large product and it's very difficult for us to demo that, right? Like we can't just leave it at our customer. They actually have to come see the product when it's all the way built. So if you have people who are early pipeline, who will be at the show, working with your sales director and trying to arrange live demos at the show. I have a company I did a lot of co-marketing with in the welding space, and they sold this huge collaborative spool welding robot. It was like a $300,000 piece of equipment. It took a whole week for them to put it together, and they just sold to people who welded pipe all the time. And they could never demo it. They had a couple scattered across the US and Canada, and they could never actually demo that product anywhere unless they wanted to fly out and do it. So what they did is, when they had people early in pipeline, they would invite them personally to do a live demo with the kind of spools they were doing at the show. And it was a great way to spin for the opportunity so they could be convinced whether that was going to be the right product for their business or not. And we were able to set appointment. They set appointments. They had people come. They did a half hour, 45-minute, hour-long demo with all those different spools, demonstrated all the data and all the camera data that they had. And then that to them was it was a great way for them to run the trade show, and it worked really well for them. It helped them close a lot of deals. So I think a lot of it is looking at the kind of product you sell, the go-to-market strategy that you have, how good your CRM data is, where you can take advantage of those kinds of things, and then making the trade show about making it easier for your sales team, not just in terms of people who you're going to see at the show for the first time, but also people that you already have existing, that you have a better chance of closing by getting them involved and seeing that product up close at an earlier point than they maybe otherwise are able to.
That's a great point, Matt. And it makes me think back to what is the goal of your trade show? Are you actually setting a goal? Is it brand building? Is it to close deals? Is it to sell? Are you optimizing your booth, your setup, that whole event. Because, okay, I think we get laser focused. I think we should talk about this too. Like trade shows are not just booths, right? It's like this whole thing that goes on beyond that. So, but I want to get y'all's opinion on what's the purpose of the trade show in the first place.
Yeah,
How do you know that?
that's a great question. Like, Brendon, I know you said you had a channel marketer at yours, right? So you guys were like 40 million.
Yep.
So would you say your trade show was more like lead gen or brand building?
Yeah, I'd say it was more on the I think before I started it was more on the lead gen side, and I kind of switched it more to the brand building, right? Because like think about like to me the way I think like lead gen, like you're only going to see a person for maybe 30 seconds to a minute in your booth, and then they're going to go and look at 150 to 200 other booths, and if depending on the size of the hall. I did shows out in Moscone Center in San Francisco, and it was 2 halls, right? So like you're competing mentally with all those other companies, so you don't have that much time to like get people into the funnel. So it was more like, let's create some brand awareness for people that don't know who we are, and then just trying to get them into the funnel so we can talk about them more later down the road. Because I know I'm not going to probably do a whole lot at that show, but I'm not trying to get leads either, because there's not enough time for a person to move, to buy a $250,000 piece of equipment to move through the funnel that quickly to say, yeah, I want to buy that. But at least let's try and generate some interest and then move forward from there.
How about for you, Mary?
Yeah, so we were like a $300 million company. So we were just at the trade shows to be at the trade shows. And I think when you get into a company that size, it becomes kind of diluted. So you stop measuring certain tactics, and trade shows was definitely one of them. So I kind of brought in, I don't know if you guys have all read Matt's article about trade show economics, but like really scrutinizing the spend there and how much, your lead is costing you. I brought that up to my leadership team, and they were like, oh, okay, well, whatever. Like, we're doing it to build brand, we're the biggest company in our space. We need to keep the brand like top of mind. And I was like, okay, that's fair. But I still think then you need to do the activities that require building a brand. So what constitutes a brand building activity versus a lead gen activity, right? So lead gen is going to be stuff like live demos, talking with sales, like making sure you're product specific. But brand building is more like, hey, let's build relationships. Let's make this a live event. Let's make sure we're creating a content engine out of our trade show booth,
Yeah, 100%. So like to reference that unit economics article, which is on Girl's website, if you want to check it, like I did that for our company. I saw a comment on the chat about someone saying it was the most expensive lead gen tool was the trade show. And for us, it was the case as well. I mean, if you spend $230,000 on your booth and you scan 300 badges, that's $757 a badge scan. I mean, that's pretty expensive when you consider the intent behind that badge scan. I mean, you could be scanning a lot of students, you could be scanning passerbys, and then to the point, like you're one of 100 companies who scan that person's badge in that time frame. And so if you're going to do it as a lead gen tool, I think one of the keys to consider is having a plan for what to do with those leads as soon as you have them scanned. So like for me, what I did when I was at Binzel to give myself the greatest possibility of getting back from them is we had an automated touch point every day after the show. And then we had a direct mail touch point that we would also send after the show as well. And so what I did though, is because I knew that there were 100 other companies who were going to contact this person, like literally the next week, is I would simply, let's say, I mean, if you use the lead gen tool at the show, which you should, if you're going to go to the show and spend all that money, feels like spending that $1,200 is worth it. I would take the leads from every single day. I'd go back to my hotel and I'd go work another hour to 2 hours just to process everyone that we scanned that day, put them in the drip campaign, and then make sure that I was one of the first companies they heard from the next, like that evening or that morning when they open up their email the next day, just to say, hey, thanks so much for attending our booth. We appreciate you coming by. Here's an offer or an additional piece of content. I want to, this is your rep in your area, because not all of your sales team is going to be at the show. So they may have talked to someone who's not their sales rep with their contact information. Let them know that they may hear from them in the future, and then just invite them to come back to the booth at any time if they have any more questions and any other products they wanted to see. And then at that point, you're running a larger content program behind that over time. But you did that. I did that every single day after the show because I wanted to be one of the first people that they heard from. If it was a really high intent person that I felt was a really strong lead. And that's the thing, when you do like the badge scan, like you get a chance to do those qualifiers the way you want. Like you have to qualify like hot, warm, cold, like really important to coach your sales and product team on that, because if they're going to not do that, it's going to be hard for you to prioritize it for your team. And then the other aspect of that I also made sure that I coached my team on was the note section of your lead gen tool. Like use the microphone on your phone. Like first off, download the app, don't use the hardware. Use the microphone on your phone, put in robust notes, as many notes as you have from your conversation with that person. Put in who you are so they know who they talk to in case they need to follow up with them. And then that way, the person who gets notified of that lead has as much information so they could do the best follow-up they possibly can. Like we work in industrial, we're not SaaS marketers. There's not always the most mature sales process that goes into this. So sometimes you have to compensate for that for your sales team. Not every industrial company has inside sales. Sometimes you just have regional sales managers. Sometimes you just sell through distribution. So your regional sales manager, your key account person has to help shepherd that deal along. So it's important for you to put in as much information as humanly possible, customize your lead gen tool to work for your CRM. So when you're uploading data, it's not going to be all messed up. Spend the time to, concatenate stuff correctly. Sometimes you have to do that. And then make sure that people get notified as soon as possible. And then on the backside of that, we would take any hot or warm lead that we got from that show. And then we spent the whole next week putting together like little swag care packages to send to them individually and send it to them. And then we got some nice virality from that on Instagram and stuff like that. People sharing, they got this super cool care package from us with like little welding tools and some stickers and stuff like that. And it was a nice personal touch that they enjoyed on the back end of that. We put in like a little personalized product box that we usually used. And so there's sort of like both those components help you be a little more memorable. So when your salesperson does reach out, because sometimes they won't reach out until the beginning till late that next week, they'll have a touch point that they'll remember it by, right? So it's all about with the trade show, again, you're one of so many companies getting your badge scan. What can you do post badge scan to stick out a little bit in the mind of that person to show you give a shit? Excuse my language, and you actually want to pursue their business.
Yeah, I think that it's like two parts, right? It's preparing, like what are you going to do before you scan that badge, or what's the plan of your booth? Like how are you going to make yourself memorable before they even scan their badge with you? So like what's happening around them, and then how are you going to do thoughtful, intentional follow up with that person afterwards when you just got 300 names? Like how do you know which one's the right name? And it just goes back to like that lead qualification. If there's not a way, because I noticed this in the chat, Katie Claus said this, if you have the option to do the qualifiers. So it sounds like it's not always an option depending on what trade show you go to and what software you have. So what would you suggest to folks if that's not an option for them? Like just use your phone?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't really have a good, I was like, maybe Katie has a thought on this. You want to unmute Katie Parlin?
Yeah, I have a thought. This is something that we do at almost every trade show. So the company that I work for sells large water jet equipment. And at every show, we try to purchase the lead scanner and the printer, but not every show you can get the printer. So these leads just end up going to the digital world and you can download them. But for the shows where we can get a printer, what we do is we print out every lead that we get, and we have our own lead slips that we have created in-house and bring that with us that has lead qualifications on the slips. We collect information like end market. We have certain criteria that we use to determine whether the lead is, high intent or low intent, and then what we do from there. So on the slip, it has all of that information contained on it, and we can just easily put check marks next to things after a conversation. And then there's a section for notes down below, so we can put, all of the qualitative stuff that isn't actually in the checklist. And then what we do is we staple that to the lead slip. collect it all, and then we have that in one place, and we can refer back to the digital lead copy. But it's a bit manual, but you're having a conversation with each prospect, or at least you should be.
Mhm.
And if you don't write those notes down right then and there, they're gonna go away. But yeah, we take our own lead slips that we create and staple it right to the lead slip at the trade show. It's worked pretty well for us. It can get a bit messy, but it's the best thing we've come up with. I would love to know if there are any other better suggestions.
So Jen Furman mentioned having the tablet running in the background with running the CRM and adding notes to the customer's lead or opportunity, which I think is a rather good suggestion. Another one that you could do if you're running something like HubSpot is you could simply create a form specific to the trade show. And that's a good way to route them right into your Salesforce or into another campaign even. So you create like a specific form for the trade show that you're running, like FabTech 2022. You basically have that share link on all the time. You can set something so when you submit it, it reloads and it's blank. And then basically you're just like consistently adding most everyone carries a card with them anyway. Most guests do even. So you can you can fill out like the perfunctory data really afterwards. You have their phone number and you have their email address and their name and their company and all that stuff, even the address usually. So really what you can focus on that show, if you're going to do something like that, is focus on the note taking in terms of like putting really robust notes in from the conversation. So that's another option that you could also do if you're going to pay for Wi-Fi at the booth and you're not able to do that. So that's another thing that if you're doing smaller shows where the badge scan maybe is expensive, and it's worth it to do it, that's another option that I think you can also pursue.
So to come back, oh, sorry, go ahead, Mary.
Yeah, this is like an interesting conversation because it seems like very focused on the lead gen aspect.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if we can go back to like Matt's point about trade show economics. Are you all who are here today tracking the leads that you get from trade shows? Are you tracking the economics of it? And if so, are you telling your leadership team? Like, are you also trying to, reinvest or newly invest into other digital marketing tactics, coming back with those numbers saying, hey, I know we want to do trade shows. We want to go back to the big ones, but could we do it a little bit differently? Because here's what I'm finding of like both the quality of the leads and how much it's costing us from a company perspective. So I know Aaron said, is there other activities you can do at a trade show that kind of maybe are more brand building and not necessarily so focused on generating leads? So some of the ideas I had are a little more, if you want to be a little more outgoing about it. So if you wanted to show up in the trade show, make it almost like a podcast recording where you're like almost like a mini media company in and of yourself. So you have like a video, you can do it on an iPhone. Like honestly, the quality does not matter here. Even if you get the audio from it, it's great. So you can like kind of go there knowing you're going to get customer insights. So look at it as like, be very intentional about what trade shows you're attending. I noticed in the chat, a lot of you are going to the smaller ones, which is great. You can kind of get insights from those niche customer segments. What do they care about? What problems are they trying to solve? What products or solutions are they using now to get them? Record all that, make a blog post about it, make a couple social posts about it, bring it back to your leadership team, bring it back to your product marketing team. Like the more intentional I think you are about the trade show, the more fun it can be. I know in our planning meeting, Matt, I would love to hear you discuss that live demo you guys were doing with the influencer too. That was awesome.
Oh yeah. So if you, I mean, not everybody lives in a space or works in an industrial space where influencer marketing is a thing. I was fortunate being in the welding space where it really was. And there's countless welders with 20, 30, 40, 50,000 Instagram followers or TikTok followers. I mean, it's a real cottage industry that exists there. And so we had a YouTube channel named called WeldTube. They have like 200,000 YouTube subscribers, I believe, and they have a huge Instagram following as well. They used our flagship air-cooled MIG torch. They loved it. And they had a couple guys, they're based out of Houston, Texas. It was actually a welding academy. So one of the things that we wanted to do with them at the show one year was like, hey, what if we just set up live? I mean, first off, I should say, if you're going to take all this heavy machinery to your to your trade show and you're going to present it, you absolutely have to have it powered up and doing a demo of some kind. Like, it's just, in my opinion, table stakes. Like, if you're going to do it, if you're going to be there, you can't say we're going to do static displays. Like, you have to demo the product. And so what we did is we were like, hey, why don't you all come and do some pipe demonstrations at the show, pipe welding demonstrations. And we were all lined up to do that with them. And they brought, like, they promoted on their Instagram, they promoted on their YouTube, they bring people in. And it was a great way for us to get a lot of crowd at our show. And plus, they can speak about the product in a way that has a lot more resonance with people who are watching it than my sales guy who's there to sell the product, right? These guys use it every day. They're making a lot of YouTube videos with it. They can speak a lot about, as a welder, what they like about it and what they don't like about it. And for me, that was really powerful. Another thing that I did is there's this guy, Jamie McKnight, who hosted this thing called the Arc Junkies Podcast. And he was doing hits all around the show. And he asked me if he could come and do a giveaway with this company called Outlaw Leather. And I was like, yeah, dude, come do the podcast in my booth. So I just set him up, like, right in the middle of my floor in front of the chemicals table, which nobody gives a crap about because no one cares about welding chemicals at a trade show. And so I was like, let's just set up right here. And he put on, like, his big amplifier, and he had his microphone set up and his big vinyl display. And we basically did a 20-minute hit. He interviewed me for like 2 minutes, and I just kind of chatted. And then they brought in Ishmael from Outlaw. And then a bunch of people, again, congregated around because they did the same social media hit. So they're going to be at the Binzel booth at this time. And we're going to give away these really sweet pipe welding helmets, basically, with Outlaw. And so we got this big crowd of people at the booth who gathered around. We did the giveaway. It was really popular. And then most of them stuck around to check out the guns after our handheld guns after the show. And so if you can find people in your space who do content as a living, so if you think about guys like Eddie Saunders from Flex Machine Tools, or Jake Hall, the manufacturing millennial, and they're going to be at these shows, they all go to them. Chris Lukey, another one who does these constantly. I mean, a great thing to do if you don't have like quite like a classic influencer like that in the welding space, find someone who's more of a manufacturing influencer in general, and try to collaborate with them on content at your booth in some way, shape, or form. Invite them for a panel discussion. Invite them to do a giveaway. Invite them to do like a little YouTube video series at your show. So, leverage people who are at the show who have influence in the space and try to collaborate with them on content. It's a really good way to bring traffic to your booth, get eyes on your booth that you otherwise would not be able to, and they'll bring credibility with them as well. So I definitely tried to do that as much as possible when I was at the show, and I was able to do it to pretty good effect. I mean, look, we were a mid-sized company. I mean, the big players in my space were like Lincoln and ESAB and Miller and Hypertherm. I wasn't going to be able to do what those guys did, but I had to do what I could do as a medium-sized welding OEM supplier in order to bring people to my booth and leverage the people who did love my product. And so I did that as much as I could, and was able to get good results in terms of getting traffic and interest in my booth as a result of doing that.
Yeah, that's a great way to extend the ROI of a show, right? So now you have all this content that's going to work for you for the next year, 2 years that you can use in other marketing, right? So now you're extending your ROI, which is really great.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So, I mean, to me, like the other thing is like, obviously the content collaboration, I think, is a big thing. If you really could do something awesome, like if you have some like really key big customers who you have, most people here probably have some kind of VIP program or like customer, customer research program, like with some key customers. Like we did this a lot with John Deere when we were at Binzel. John Deere was one of our biggest customers, and we knew their director of welding engineering very, very well. And so like one of the things that we were hoping to do before they canceled the show in 2020 was I was going to try to do a panel discussion with him and with somebody from one of the robotics companies, probably ABB. And we were going to talk about, the shifting changes of welding automation, because, one of the things in welding was that, welding sometimes is moving more towards bonding and adhesives. And that's something that even John Deere was considering as an R&D project, was getting away from welding in favor of adhesives. And so we're going to talk about some of those sort of challenges with someone who's really on the cutting edge of R&D with that at a major company. And so if you have key people like that, that you work with, work with your key account manager or with the person who has that relationship and try to organize like, hey, could you come do a 20-30 minute discussion with us, like on that topic? We'll film it live. We could do it even privately if you don't want to do it in front of an audience, but these people like have people's attention at the show that you can leverage. Another aspect that I would also say is almost everyone here probably has someone in their company who tries to do the speaking sessions. Yeah. Do you guys know the speaking sessions that happen at these events? So if you have someone who's going to be at that speaking session, you should either hire a freelance videographer, or if you are lucky enough, like I was, to have one on staff, have them go to that speaking session and record it. And then cut it up, cut the Q&A up, cut the whole thing up, transcribe it, even if you have to. But the speaking sessions are other sort of content means. I mean, some of them get big crowds, some of them don't get big crowds. Some of them, like Q&A, is really good. And so if you have a subject matter expert who's going to do speaking sessions, like, you should be capturing that content as well. That usually doesn't happen at your booth. That happens at one of the conference rooms in another area of the hall. But that's another area to make this like a content event for yourself.
So we've got a question from Adam, and I think I can ask you to unmute, but you have to unmute yourself. But Adam, just if you want to restate your question for everyone, if they didn't see what you got.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm not technically in the fully industrial space, but I work for a manufacturing company, so this kind of fits into what we do. We're a fairly small company. We're about $10 million annual revenue. I'm being asked to do trade shows for the first time by this company. Previously, the owners were always like, we don't do trade shows. You can attend, you can visit them if you want. And I've had really good experiences walking show floors, visiting customers, things like that. But now I am being asked to stand this up from scratch. It's been 11 years since I've done a trade show. So the world has changed. And I'm trying to, not only figure out, what type of booth to buy, but now I have, kind of the shows I think will work best for us in our industry, some small shows, but I'm trying to wrap my head around all the costs. So attending, you have to buy all the incidentals for the booth, the power and the furniture and everything, shipping everything there. If you have to pay a union to set it up, or if you can set it up yourself, it's just, it's a very big ask. And I'm a department of one. I have some salespeople in my company that I work with in our sales marketing department, but I'm the only marketing person. So it's just a really big lift right now. And I'm wondering if there's any way to kind of shortcut going through all of the media kits to figure everything out. If I can kind of ballpark, if a booth costs, $10,000 at this show to rent a space, is there X percentage that everything else will kind of be on that, from, I guess, your guys' experience who attend shows on a regular basis?
Such a great, wow. That's it. I think everyone here, I see, like, smiles, because we're all just like, whoo, that's a lot of work. But
yeah,
it is a lot of work.
That's why Matt's going to take 200 hours per show to plan.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a great question. So, like, where to start? And I think one of the biggest things that I've just been hearing a lot too, and I'd love to ping this back to Matt, Brendon, and Mary, is like, now that we are in 2022 and we've learned so much and we see how trade shows are changing, maybe you can shortcut some things to save some money too, like just by shrinking your footprint and maybe shrinking what you're even offering. And that would help simplify it for you a little bit when you're going through the entire setup process. Like, do you need to do the whole, like, crazy setup that maybe you would have seen in 2019? Or do you need to take what we've learned and seen what's working just from FabTech even, and shrink the footprint, make it simpler for yourself because you are a team of one, that sort of thing. What do y'all think?
Well, I would say, Adam, first off, thanks for coming on. I know we know each other a little bit here. I really appreciate you coming on just in general. I think, like, you need to first off think about your product and how you're going to display it. It's really going to impact a lot of the things you're going to need for yourself. Because I think about all of the utilities that you usually need at a show. We were talking about this yesterday. It's like, do I need water? Do I need gas? Do I need plumbing? Do I need rigging? And rigging is basically, depending on how heavy your product is, you may need a a 5,000 pound forklift or a 10,000 pound
Yeah.
forklift.
To
If you
give
need a 10,000 pound forklift, it's like 50% more expensive
Yeah.
to get.
I mean, a little more context for you guys. Since I'm not industrial, we manufacture antennas. They're not that big. They don't move. They transmit something invisible that you can't see. So it's going to be unfortunately unless we have a video screen with like video or something on it, there's not going to be anything really dynamic there. We don't have, and all the customers in our space who sell the equipment that antennas go onto, they're mostly competitors with each other. So I don't feel like I can have one customer's like radio equipment running our product at a show as an example without accidentally offending someone else. So that's another wrinkle in it, is I worry that I can't, it just won't be dynamic or interesting enough. But we're going through an M&A process, early days on it. And they're like, well, all these other companies are going to trade shows and we need to be there too. And for me, it's going to be a brand building exercise. I don't expect to get, I don't expect it to turn a positive ROI in terms of direct lead correlation to the show, but it's more just a brand building piece.
So quick question.
Go ahead, Brendon.
Do you sell like through a distribution network, or is it all direct?
We do sell through distribution. It's a smaller percentage of our sales. We do a ton direct. We have e-commerce. So it's mostly direct with some through distribution.
Okay. So I know in my previous life, we would partner a lot with our distribution. So we would, we'd send one salesperson and a couple of our products, and then we'd be a part of a larger booth just to help us cut costs down. But so at least we had a presence there. So I don't know if that'd be feasible for you, but we found some pretty good success to reduce costs, but then have value at the show for us as well.
That's something I've thought about. Our biggest distributor doesn't go to these smaller shows because they're more in the kind of general electronics and RF space, where we are like hyper focused in the military and law enforcement. Yeah. So it's kind of a different kind of very focused market that we serve versus them, where they do dabble in this space, but they're kind of a broader electronics distribution company.
Did you say that your customers do go to the exhibit at the show as well? The radio
a lot of times our customers do exhibit, not all of them at every show, but usually at the shows I would like to go to, there's generally 2 or 3 that will be there, and they're all competitors.
Okay. There could be an opportunity to partner with the people that are at the shows, and maybe you put a salesperson in each booth if that's possible. So especially if it's
we've gone back and forth on that. It'd be a good idea. We work with these companies really closely offline or on, off of trade shows and things like that. But in a public facing area, there's just the worry of perception if a competitor sees us at a booth and we're not at theirs, for example.
Did you guys walk the show before you attended it?
Yeah, I've always, I like walking shows. I've walked most of the shows I would attend. There's 1 or 2 that I would like to exhibit at that I haven't had the chance to walk, but based on the types of customers and the people that go, based on, the list of exhibitors and things like that, they would be good for us. But a few of them I have walked.
So assuming you're doing like a 10 by 10, do you know the size?
A 10 by 10. I thought about 10 by 20, but I think that's overkill to start. I think I'm going to do 10 by 10.
If you're going to do a 10 by 10, you really don't have enough room to do a lot of like electrical and other sorts of utilities and stuff like that. So you're going to be limited by that constriction anyway. So I would budget, it's going to be like $35 per square foot on the booth, something like that.
35.
Like $35 to $40 probably. And then at that point, like you're looking at electrical, I'd budget like $500 for that tops. And then depending on how heavy your products are, drayage is like, it's a unit cost per. So, put like whatever the unit cost is for drayage, and then you're shipping LTL probably in all likelihood.
Yeah.
LTL is like limited truckload essentially for the verbiage. And then they basically they'll drop it on the show and you'll be able to do it. You should be able to do a 10 by 10 show, in my opinion, all in for less than $14,000.
Wow.
That's my personal opinion. But a lot of it's going to vary a little bit on your product and what you demonstrate and like who you and how many people you bring to the show. But normally when I was doing 10 by 10 shows, I was looking at anywhere between a $12,000 to $15,000 outlay all in.
Wow. That seems pretty inexpensive. One of the shows I was looking at, 10 by 10 booth was just the rental space for the booth was like $8,000.
Wow.
Okay.
just for the space.
So if that's the case, you'd probably be looking at more like closer to 18 to 20,000 then. Because I mean,
Okay.
when I'm thinking about $35 per square foot on a 1,000-foot booth, that's like $3,500 for booth space. So obviously add that, tack that on. I don't know if it's been a premium or not, but
It
a
might be
lot
like
of
a
the,
defense premium.
yeah.
It's
So
like double the cost of maybe the booth space to get like a rough estimate. Then you really have to then start digging down into all the costs to get a more accurate.
yeah,
I guess
that's
closer.
what I would say. I mean,
Okay.
if anyone else here has another take or a different take on that, or if you've done smaller shows, I'd love to hear it. But that's normally how I would budget it for myself. I was fortunate to walk into situations where we had done a lot of 10x10s before, so I already had historical costs on these shows, so I already knew what to budget. And this was like when we do stuff in Canada or do stuff in the US, it didn't really matter. It was basically the same cost all in.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yep.
One thing that seems to be consensus is splurge for the thick carpet.
Yes.
Yes.
Get the overlay and get the
Yeah.
Visqueen.
I always spend extra time at the booths that have the thick carpet, someplace to sit, things like that.
Mhm. All right, so I did want to bring like one more aspect up into the trade show discussion, which is I think something that a lot of people here struggle with overall in their day-to-day job, and that's your trade show is your best chance to talk to your customers and really using the trade show as an opportunity to get and jam in as much market research as you possibly can into the show so you can understand better who you're talking to and how to market to them in other channels going forward. And I wanted to kind of bring that up a little bit because I have some thoughts on what to do in regards to that, including things that may be uncomfortable at first, but actually in my experience, have worked really well and have helped me do my job better as a marketer. So I think the first thing that I would say to that point is if you're a marketer at the trade show, you should at least go try to sell a little bit while you're at the show. If you have someone who's there and like there's no one to take them because your product manager, your sales team are taken or they're busy, go take the chance to go sell to someone and learn how to pitch and sell your product a little bit and explain how it works. Like I can safely tell you, my first year I did FabTech, I was in Las Vegas. I'd been at the job for 5 months. And we sold like over 200 something products. And there were thousands of part numbers as well within those products. And I didn't know a damn thing about welding torches whatsoever. But I was determined to go and at least try to sell the product while I was there because it was the only way I was going to get better at knowing the product. By the way, doing trade shows for any one reason is probably the best way to learn about your product intimately because you have to know how to put things together or how they integrate with other systems. So that's another good reason to do a trade show as a marketer is to understand your product. But so I would go and I must have talked to about 10 to 15 people there a day at the show. And I fell on my face probably about 90% of the time trying to explain the product because they would ask me a technical question about like a recessed nozzle or something like that. And I wouldn't know how to answer that. Or they would ask me the difference between like flux core, solid core wire. And I didn't even know what those things were. And so I didn't even have an answer for that. Or they would ask me about the difference between amperage and when I would go from air cooled to water cooled. And I didn't know the answer to that. And so I basically went through that entire first trade show, falling on my face time after time, talking to prospective people, probably turning a whole bunch of people off to my company at the time. And you know what? It was one of the best experiences of my life because I did the next year, I was a lot better talking to my customers at the trade show booth about the products. And then the next year I was even better. And then it also helped me in my job when I wanted to collaborate with other people for content. I was able to talk very intelligently about our products and how they worked with other products because most of our products integrate with other things. And I was able to help move some of those content projects forward as a result. So one thing I would suggest to you, and I know it's hard because sometimes you're sitting there and you have to be making sure there's collateral and making sure there's swag and making sure there's food ordered, you're doing all these other things except trying to talk to your customers and learn from them. But you get a chance to do that and take as much opportunity to talk to customers there and sell if you can, because you'll be better as a marketer for doing that. I want to pause there and see if Mary or Brendon, you all have anything to add on that. If anyone else, by the way, in the audience has anything to add to that either.
Yeah, I'll say to your point, Matt, like just trying to sell a product, man, that is it's the best way to like get your hands on the stuff. Like a lot of times, like I never got the chance to like work with the stuff because it was in manufacturing, right? And it was away from where my office was. So the trade show is a great place for me to get my hands on something, set it up, turn it on, like learn how it works, so that I had more context the rest of the year on how to actually run this stuff and what people are using on how they used it. So, and then it was cool for me to like sit back and watch the sales team do demos, or talk about the product, right? So I could see like, these are the things that they bring up that is important to the customers, and then how the sales team handled objections or how they handled questions. So that was a great way for me to like get my brain sparked on, oh, okay, these are questions that are getting asked. Maybe I should write some content to go after those questions.
Yeah, I would say one other thing to add before Mary, you jump in, is like when I would go fall on my face doing some of those conversations with prospective customers, immediately what I would do is I'd go to one of my sales managers and go, hey, they asked this and I didn't know this, or they did this and I wasn't sure how to answer this. Like, can you walk me through that a little bit so I know it better? So I just went immediately for the feedback loop, like instantly. I would go to the first person who was free and I would ask them the question, and then they would walk me through it. And so I was better prepared for the next time. Like, yes, looking stupid sometimes at the trade show is part of the job, because you're the marketer. You're not always the most technically inclined person, but you got to be willing to take your lumps in order to learn better how to talk about and present your product.
Yeah, totally agree. Another way that I got to talk to customers either at trade shows or events was I would honestly just go up to them and be like, hey, I'm a new marketer. I don't know a lot about this industry. Would you guys be willing to answer a few questions just to help me educate myself? And that honestly got me some of the best content I've ever had. Like, as a marketer, I don't know how you guys are in your companies, but I was like desperate for subject matter expertise, and you're basically getting it for free. If you're kind of going in there, you're not afraid to be a little bit, look a little new or whatever, but you get some great content from it and some great experience. And to Matt's point, that's like really great sales experience too. I mean, talking to customers is one of those like skills that just translate to so many other things. I think we talked about this yesterday, didn't we? We're like, hey, if you talk to like 5 to 10 customers and you have the same answers, the same interview questions, that's a market research report right there that you can present to people. There's data, that's stuff that you can put out there later. That's like quality gold social media posts.
100%. So like one other thing that I talked about that I thought about doing that I did for market research at the trade show was if it wasn't going to be all that qualitative feedback that I was looking for, you could also look to do quantitative feedback by having like a survey of some kind for like VIP customers of yours to fill out. And the way you entice them with that is you got to get like a really sick piece of swag giveaway to give them. So, if you're going to give like a leather jacket or like a hunting coat or like something really cool that they're like, oh yeah, I definitely want to get something like that. Well, you can like entice them to like, hey, all I need you to do to get this is just come by and just fill out this survey for 5 minutes that I put on SurveyMonkey here at our thing. As soon as you complete that, you can take this and go on your way. It's a really simple way if you want to get more like quantitative feedback that you can take with you. Just get a really, really good piece of giveaway swag that's like valuable. You can't give away pens or hats or shirts. That's not enough. You gotta spend on it, like for reals. Get yourself like 50 of them or something like that, and then do the email campaign. Like figure out who you want to try to get feedback from in your CRM. Like blast that to them. If you're going to be at the show, we're giving this away. All you have to do is just show up, ask for the giveaway, and then you just say, hey, you got to do this survey for me for 5 minutes, and then it's all yours to take with you. And that's a really good way to give yourself some quantitative feedback to go along with your qualitative feedback. And then you're off and running for 2022. You got a lot of market research to work with to help devise content, channels, messaging, positioning, figuring out which industries to target. So those are to me all really useful things to use for the trade show to your advantage as a marketer.
One thing that I feel like we have to talk about, and it doesn't seem as important when you look at like the entirety of our jobs, but swag, you brought it up. Like, do you need it? Is it something that you have to give away? I mean, I was looking at my computer. I've got like a little webcam cover from the last trade show that I went to that I still use to this day and always think about Little Rock Tech Fest. But just wondering, like, what do you really need to be giving away, if anything? Like, is that the right way to make yourself memorable?
I mean, I don't have a really strong opinion on this. Yes, I do think you need swag. I think it's kind of like it's a bit table stakes at the show. I mean, there's certainly things that I've seen that have worked better than others. I mean, hats and beanies are very popular. Shirts can be a little difficult because of sizing. Pens, I think, by and large, suck, and I wouldn't even bother with them. There's cool things you can give away too, like little notebooks, which I think are neat. Which I've done before. I've given away like little journals that people have liked that have like graph paper on it, which people like because they do a lot of measurements. I mean, I haven't seen a lot of companies like really do anything that kind of blew me away in terms of swag. I mean, Brendon or Mary, if you all have anything that comes in mind, I'm certainly welcome to suggestions or any kind of feedback, or if anyone in the audience has seen anything that stood out for them. I mean, you can throw it up in the chat because I would certainly like to know. But to Jen's point, tailoring your swag to your audience and the type of event is absolutely the route to go. And so just understanding what your audience likes to do. They like to fish and hunt. Well, then, have something related to that. Are they more into like, sports or something like that? Then tap into that. Are they more into like techie little gadgets? Then tap into that. So I think it's understanding a little bit your audience and the kind of things they're into, and then catering your giveaway to them.
Yeah, I hated all the swag I ever did because I was like, we want a lot, so we're gonna do pens. But I'll say, like, the favorite thing I've ever got, I was like on a webinar with Salesforce, and they sent out a nice little like care package to do Vietnamese iced coffee, and I really like the little ice cube tray that they sent out. So that's in my freezer right now, and it's the only swag I've ever kept. Otherwise, it all gets thrown away. And I kind of see it as a big waste, like sustainability wise, like get something that people aren't going to throw away because that's a waste of money.
Yeah, for sure. I would agree with that. Mary, anything on your end?
No, like I said, we were kind of diluted at the trade show at our point.
Yeah.
So we were like the pens, the stress balls, the just like weird, crappy corporate stuff.
Yeah.
So please don't do that. Please don't do that.
I do see some interesting stuff in the chat. So there's hot sauce.
Me too.
So someone mentioned hot sauce. Someone mentioned Yeti mugs, which I think would always be very popular. Those would be kind of cool. Coolers would also be cool. Coolers is a lot to ship. You're probably putting a lot of your products in those coolers and then shipping them with your crate, I would imagine. But all right, I had one more thing I wanted to touch base on in terms of the trade show, and I think it's something that most marketers don't get time to try to do. But if you're going to do things like maybe scale back your booth size as attendance goes down, but you don't want to give your budget back necessarily, doing things outside of the trade show hall itself to try to bring people together with your company. And so thinking about like, what events can you put together for yourself outside of the trade show itself in order to like network and bring like-minded people together, bring your best customers together, and put together something that they have fun at and remember. So like, something you could do is like rent out the bar in the hall or across the street and have like a little VIP event for your customers who are going to be at the show. You can hand out little tickets at the booth if you know they're going to be there, and you can say, hey, 4:00, come here. It's going to have an open bar, and we're just going to try to bring 100 of our best customers there along with our entire sales team. And then you can bring them together, free drinks. That's where it's ultimately, when it's industrial, and it's all business, really. It's not even just manufacturing, but it's still a relationship driven business. And when you get people a chance to like relax and get their guard down, they're not going to get their badge scanned. They're not going to get jammed into a sales conversation. It's just like very laid back conversation with like-minded people in the same industry. If you're the marketer, the person who put that environment together, that's a really good feeling and something that people will remember, not just the company say, hey, this company put this really cool open event together for some of their VIP customers. And I was one of those guys. But also like your sales team will really appreciate you putting them all in that environment so they can deepen relationships with them as well. And so, when you're thinking about cutting your booth space back and saying, well, maybe we're not going to put $230,000 in this year. Maybe we're just going to put, $150,000 because we don't need as much booth space. Maybe take some of that extra money you have and put 10 grand towards renting a bar out for an hour and a half and inviting your best customers to go there with your entire sales and key accounts team and just renting that whole bar out for them for a VIP event. And then you're just there, kind of the person who put that together. So I just think there's other ways to impact relationships, and there's other ways to like be memorable at the trade show booth aside from the booth experience itself. You could even do something like super freaking crazy, like give them a helicopter tour of Chicago or something like that. I mean, it could be anything, right? It's all about like what the idea is that you could do to like to do something that they're going to remember from the entire experience at the show. Like, what can you think of that would do that?
Well, we're about 5 minutes from the top of the hour. So I feel like this is a conversation. We did the prep call for it yesterday, and we talked for a lot longer than what we had even planned. So I feel like this could keep going. And I hope that it does, because this is going to be a community that we want to keep seeing you, hopefully even more faces, but the same faces throughout the year. Like Matt said at the beginning, we're going to be doing these on Thursdays and Tuesdays, once a month, or twice a month. So today's Tuesday. The next one's going to be on a Thursday, last Thursday of the month. We're going to have actually Aaron Weeks, another one of our strategists who's on here. If you want to say hi, Aaron, join us to talk about, I think the topic's going to be SEO. So another cool topic, but we'll be sending out another link because it's separate. Zoom doesn't let you, logistics. But anyway, Aaron, anything you want to say about that real quick before we wrap up?
Definitely. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, I just want to plug some questions for everyone so you can start thinking. SEO is another channel as an in-house marketer that we get asked about all the time. Think about this. Is SEO a strategy or tactic? What are the 5 SEO activities you can stop doing right now? Is SEO a long-term or short-term tactic? Or is it really a short-term or long-term mindset? Think about those. We'll talk about them in more detail.
Cool. Well, I really appreciate all of you all coming on, spending an hour with us. I hope some of you all got to know each other a little bit, doing some private messages on the chat. I mean, really what I want more than anything, I think if you know me, you know how big of like a Chris Walker fan that I am. And one of my favorite parts about doing Demand Gen Live with Chris every Tuesday night, and I'll be there again tonight, are all like the relationships I've built with people outside of just Demand Gen Live itself. People like Adam and Rob, I actually met through Demand Gen Live, and I've met other people there too. And I've cultivated great relationships with them. And I've been able to talk with them on other channels, and gotten to get great advice from them and get feedback from them. And have gotten to really cheer on their own projects as well. I know Rob's doing one himself around revenue alignment. And I really think for me, like one of the reasons for wanting to redo this format was wanting to get people in the same room so we can see faces and see names. Cause I think it's important, because we are, we are a rare breed out there, and being marketers in the industrial space, really trying to do it all, to drive a business outcome for our companies. And I think it's important that we have each other's back and support one another as well in those efforts. And so I really appreciate you guys all coming on, meeting each other. I hope you connect with one another after the show. We'll obviously put this out on our YouTube channel, and then we're going to have some, we'll definitely have some micro clip content that'll come out as well in the future. But we'll see you guys hopefully on Thursday in a couple of weeks for the next topic, and we'll keep inviting you, and we hope you'll keep coming and getting value out of it. And yeah, I just really appreciate y'all's time, and it was really, really nice to see a lot of y'all's faces. I appreciate that a lot.
Well, I hope you all have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for coming to Industrial Marketing Live.
Thanks, everyone.
Guys.